Hello, everybody. I'm assuming we're live. Salamu alaikum, peace upon you all. That's how we greet each other in our part of the world. We're very happy to be here with everybody in PRIS. Our people are signing in. We have already 47 people, so welcome everybody. This panel is about entrepreneurship. And this is a very important thing in the Arab world. For many, many reasons. Most importantly, over 50% of the Arab population is under the age of 30. And the silver lining here is that they are highly educated. And I want to say it's a silver lining, there's huge unemployment. So to me, these are ingredients to really harness the potential of these young people to be innovative and to create change wherever they go. And this becomes much more relevant and important today because of the economic situation, because of the identity crisis that we're all going through in the Arab world with globalization, and today because of COVID-19. And where everything that used to be impossible or too difficult to do, suddenly everything is open. And there's an opportunity to do things in a very, very different way. Because part of innovation and entrepreneurship is breaking the rules and going out there into the unknown. And there was always like inhibitions telling us, no, you can't, or that's not good, or people are scared to take risks. But today we have nothing to lose with COVID-19. And I like to look at it from a parent perspective that if a mom wants to introduce change into her home with her kids, who usually are very resistant to any changes or rules, she actually makes the change if you're moving house or moving country and so on. So within COVID-19, we're actually moving a lot, we're changing a lot, and that's an opportunity. So today we have this, and with science advancement and technology advancement and having a level playing field where knowledge is being shared through digital technology, there is an opportunity to do something different. So today our panelists, we have 3 panelists who are amazing and very distinguished and have a lot of practice and wisdom in addition to the theory. And we're very excited to have them with us. And what we're going to do with them is discuss what are the opportunities that young people have to become entrepreneurs and what are the challenges that they may stumble upon in their journey. And to talk about some key aspects that we can focus on, amongst which is collaboration, amongst sectors, amongst disciplines, and in addition to teamwork within a sector or within a team. I think these are very important issues that we need to talk about and tackle. So we're going to hear a number of stories and recommendations in this hour. And I'm going to start with my first speaker, Jinane. And Jinane is Jinane Abunadi is the executive director of the MIT Sandbox Innovation Fund program. She brings a unique combination of experiences from academic research to senior operational and strategic roles in startup companies and large businesses. After completing her graduate work, she worked as a research scientist at BBN and as a postdoctoral lecturer at MIT. She advised undergraduate and graduate students, and she held leadership roles in 2 of the most successful local Boston area startups, ITA Software and Kayak, where she gained deep knowledge about the travel technology sector. Most recently, she ran a global portfolio of third-party products for a travel port, giving her the opportunity to establish partnerships with companies across the globe and to advise and evaluate a number of startups in the travel sector. So the floor is yours, Jinane, and we are excited to hear from you and learn from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Rana. Thank you for the introduction. It's wonderful to be here and to know that there are amazing students from the Arab world focused on science and technology. And this is a great opportunity to talk about entrepreneurship as it pertains to scientists and engineers potentially. So thank you for the kind introduction, Rana. My name is Jinane Abunadi, and I am currently the executive director of one of the most subscribed entrepreneurship programs here at MIT, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Just to give you a little background about myself to all the young students out there. I was born and raised in Morocco, and I came to the United States at the age of 17 to study physics and math. I ended up studying physics and math, and then going on to do a PhD in electrical engineering and computer science. My work ended up being in machine learning and large-scale optimization on the theory side. And while at the time most of my work was really proving theorems, it turns out that area is now so critical to most of the innovations that are coming out using data analytics and machine learning, that it's ended up being actually quite useful, although I'm no longer a researcher in machine learning. So the topic today is entrepreneurship. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about MIT, which I know well, and in a little bit I will talk about also some of the work we've done in taking some of that work to the Arab world. At MIT, in the last, and it's not just MIT and other universities in the United States have decided to put a lot of energy and resources in student entrepreneurship programs in the last 10 years or so. And the reason behind that, there are multiple reasons behind that. One of the reasons is that the technologies, there are so many mature technologies out there that are ready to be deployed, and there are so many problems that can be solved with technologies that are ready. And the best way to do that is really through entrepreneurship, through startups. Big companies a long time ago decided that innovation and was better done in smaller settings, because those teams are more nimble, faster, and they're much more focused on one idea rather than having to worry about servicing customers and keeping them happy. Now you can really put all of the energy and the effort and move faster. Development costs are faster in a startup. So a lot of that also has happened because these big companies have decided that startups are where this innovation is best done, where the inventions kind of make their way out to what we call to the market, which is a kind of a commercialization effort, and it's inherently different from research. And of course, in this part of the world, and I think there's still some work to be done in the Arab world, we have capital that's available. There's a lot of capital available, and that's ready, because without capital, it's really hard to actually develop a brand new product, brand new innovation. You need capital to do that. And so there's capital that's available. And then the other part, which is, as you may be familiar, is that younger entrepreneurs have done very well. So people like Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook, who started the company in his 20s, people like Drew Houston, Dropbox founder. So there is kind of this belief that among these young people, there's that Mark Zuckerberg or that Drew Houston, and the investors are willing to kind of take a risk with a bunch of young people in order to find these kind of unicorn founders. So because of that, at least on this side, I think in the United States, and you see it in other parts of the world, Europe, Latin America, and now also increasingly in the Middle East and in Asia, there's definitely an interest in getting students started early on with this idea of entrepreneurship, and we'll talk a little bit later about what that means. So kind of that's the motivator. The motivator, also from my perspective, is the idea that science and technology have kind of historically been the mechanism to improve lives, whether that's about coming up with new diagnostics, with new drugs, or washing machines, or whatever it is that is so core to what our lives are today, including being able to have this conference remotely with what looks like now 127 people. That's been enabled by science and engineering and technology in general. And so I think for the young scientists, the young engineers out there, there is this really important role that we all need to play, which is how does the work we do kind of in the lab as researchers translate and actually make people's lives better. And entrepreneurship, this innovative entrepreneurship, is the mechanism to do that. Currently is one of the most important mechanisms to do that. And hopefully later on we'll talk a little bit more about why that's the case. So let me just tell you maybe some more specifics about our program here at MIT, the Sandbox Innovation Fund. So this is a program that I had the opportunity to launch about 4 years ago. And the idea there was to provide resources directly to students while they're students. And so when you think about yourself as a student, you're like, oh my God, I have my exams, I have my research, I have to do this report. How do I carve out time to do kind of a startup on the side? But the program is not really about asking students to carve out times to launch startups on the side. It's really asking students to carve out time and make sure that their education includes, 3 major components. One of them is the academic kind of curriculum education. You kind of go to your classrooms, you have to, study for that test, and you have to ace that test because you have to develop those core skills. And that's done kind of in this traditional, you have a professor that teaches you stuff, you go kind of learn it and you get tested and you try to get an A, and if you don't get an A, it's a disaster, or a B or whatever. So you're trying to really, this education is what you call kind of this push education, and it works, it's scalable, it's good. Then you have another component of your education, which is the research component. And that's also in the US and hopefully increasingly in the Arab world, is that in addition to learning about topics in classes in a rigorous way, you also want to learn about research where the problems are still open. And when the problems are still open, you need to figure out kind of how to formulate hypotheses and how to kind of go about validating those and designing experiments and all of that. So that's also been part of education. And then the third component, which comes through this entrepreneurship education, is really about trying to figure out how to make, that science, that technology, those inventions, how to try to get them to the people that need them, how to make people's lives better. So this part of the education is really key. And I think if we can deliver that to the students, where at the end of the day, you have to go outside to understand the market, meaning the customers that can make use of this education. So if you think you have a diagnostics tool using machine learning, for example, that's fine. You can write your code and run it and get your data. But really, to be able to get that tool into the hands of doctors is a whole other process. You have to get out there and talk to the doctors. You have to talk to the hospitals. You have to figure out how hospitals make decisions. You have to figure out how you get access to data. You have to work through privacy issues, all the things that as a researcher really seem irrelevant. There are so many other problems to kind of solve that are what we call kind of business problems that you have to learn, and you have to learn how to interact with the market outside of your university and outside of your lab. So I think ultimately that's what we want the students to do. The launching of the startup comes kind of naturally. That's really not what we're focused on. And not everybody gets to do that, because in this process, you also learn how to do a lot of due diligence on the idea, due diligence on yourself, and then figure out what the right thing is. So kind of that's overall the philosophy, I think, that we operate by in the Sandbox program. And when we launched it, we launched it with the goal of providing the resource that students need. So kind of put aside about $2 million a year to give out to students, which is a lot of money. And we will welcome all of the students that want to be part of it. So we don't try to select out from the get-go. because we believe everybody needs to actually learn. And the only way that they learn is by doing. And they learn about entrepreneurship, they learn about themselves, because ultimately the entrepreneurship journey, you cannot be a successful entrepreneur until you dig deep, both into the market, the customers, the technology, but you have to dig deep into yourself as well. Understand what motivates you, because it's a very tough road and it's a very tough journey. And unless you are able to understand what motivates you, what motivates others, to keep working for years to get the product to the people that need it, you just can't sustain it. So that's kind of an important piece. The other important piece, I think, in this entrepreneurship education is the idea that failure is really part of the process. You've got to, if you're doing something new, you're trying to take something new to the market, there's so many things that are unknown. Just as a scientist, naturally, you're going to try things out and some things will fail, and then you have to adapt, and then until something actually succeeds. So I think that's all I have to say personally. I'm really pleased to have both Dina and Marwan, very dear colleagues, who are going to give their perspective, and then all of us at the end will be able to take your questions. So I'm going to hand it over to Dina. Good morning, Dina.
Good morning, Jinane. It's amazing to be with you on another panel so soon.
Yeah.
Me too, Marwan.
We want to introduce Dina and give her, so that the audience knows how wonderful Dina is. So Dina Sherif has over 20 years of international and regional experience in women's economic inclusion, integrated sustainable development, youth civic engagement, social entrepreneurship, impact investing, strategic philanthropy, and responsible business practice, and much more. Today, she is the executive director of the Legatum Center at MIT and a lecturer at the Sloan School of Management. Dina has been chosen as one of 50 most influential women by the Amwal al-Ghad magazine, and she's the lead author of From Charity to Social Change, Trends in Arab Philanthropy, and key reports including a 7-country study on trends in responsible business practices in the Arab region, and the 2015 UNDP Business Solutions Report. I can go on and on about Dina. Formerly, she actually started a business in Cairo called Ahead of the Curve, and she also was the endowed William Brown Chair for International Business at the American University in Cairo, where she founded the Center for Entrepreneurship and taught business ethics and social entrepreneurship. She also established the John D. Gerhardt Center for Philanthropy and Civic Engagement at AUC in 2006. And she received the Woman of the Year for Entrepreneurship from Egypt, as well as the American Chamber of Commerce in 2016. So I'm going to stop here and give the floor to Dina to give us her perspective and advice for our young audience all over the Arab world on entrepreneurship. The floor is yours, Dina.
Thank you, Rana, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak to the Arab youth through this panel. And again, Jinane, it's good to be with you again. I'm going to keep my remarks brief so that we can have a bit of a discussion. Unlike Jinane, I didn't study at MIT, nor do I have a tech background. I'm more on the business economics and public policy background. And I think there are many pathways to getting to entrepreneurship. I'm currently, as you said, I'm executive director of the Legatum Center for Development and Entrepreneurship at MIT. And very quickly, that center was founded on a strong belief that entrepreneurship can be one of the many tools that we can use to get to sustainable development and inclusive growth specifically within emerging markets. So if you look at the West, United States and Europe, and you look at where they are today, a big part of how they developed their economies was by expanding their private sectors and increasing economic growth significantly. And that's exactly what the Legatum Center is promoting within emerging markets, but with a lot more focus on impact and sustainability and inclusivity. We provide, in a similar way to Sandbox, we do provide a lot of support to students at MIT, The only caveat is that you have to be focusing on a business that is impacting an emerging market, and that will be rolled out in an emerging market. And we do provide scholarships, fellowships for students who are developing business models to support development in these emerging markets. We are also launching a new fellowship program that will specifically focus on entrepreneurs from Africa who will come and spend some time at MIT as well, but that's less for education purposes, but more for giving entrepreneurs space to come to MIT and experience that ecosystem. The Legatum Center also does a lot of work around research and thought leadership, as well as promoting innovation and ecosystem growth within these markets. So aside from the Legatum Center, Rana, you asked me to talk a little bit about my thoughts on what's happening with regards to Arab entrepreneurship. And like you said, the bulk of my career has been spent in the Middle East, focusing on sustainable development, but over the past 10 to 15 years, it's been very focused on the role of the private sector and in sustainable development, and very with a very heavy focus on impact-driven entrepreneurship as a pathway. And I think there are some critical shifts that have changed in the region recently that I think it's very important for Arab youth to keep in mind. When I started focusing on entrepreneurship in the Arab world over 10 years ago, it was very rare for us to say that many youth really want to pursue entrepreneurship as a career path, or that their parents would be excited to see them pursue entrepreneurship as a career path. So even if we would see a young person in Egypt, for example, say, I want to start a business, usually their parents would say that's not a good idea. I think what we've seen now is very recently there's been a very consistent increase in numbers of young people who say they see entrepreneurship as a valid career path, and society at large looking at entrepreneurship as something that is a lot more acceptable as a career path, which is a very interesting departure point from where we were over a decade ago, and a very interesting evolution in the ecosystem in the region. I think also something to keep in mind is that, and I think Jinane touched upon this, is capital. So one of the things we always talk about when we talk about entrepreneurship is, do we have access to capital? And oftentimes people say that in the region, one of our problems is we don't have access to capital. I would say this is a huge myth. So I think year on year, we've seen an increase in available capital at the risk capital stage. So, for example, we had $53 million in 2014 as an estimate in terms of venture capital. That has increased to $410 million in 2017 and has gone on to increase in 2018, 2019. And I'm very confident it will continue to increase. And that increases as we see pipeline increase as well, which means the evolution of the ecosystem is being transformed very quickly. And if we looked at it a decade ago, we would have seen a very small pipeline of viable, innovative enterprises. And now we're seeing more and more come about. I think other interesting things that are happening in the region is we've had a number of very significant exits and IPOs, which is also a very interesting sign that the ecosystem is becoming more mature. So we've seen exits like Uber buying out Careem. We've seen Suit.com being acquired by Amazon. And, this was all followed originally by in your Jordanian, Rana, by the original Maktub story, which was bought out by Yahoo, which I think was the very beginning of this ecosystem evolving. We've also seen amazing IPO stories. So we have the IPO of Sira, which is the largest private education company based out of Egypt. This is the first private education company to IPO in all of Africa, and that came from our region. We have had a very significant IPO of Raya, which is a software and IT company also based out of Egypt. And I think what is my personal favorite is the fintech company Fawri, which is, I think, the leading fintech company in the Arab region and one of the rising fintech stars that came about in all of Africa. An amazing story that also recently IPO'd, and through this crisis of COVID, they've been performing extremely well. And one of the co-founders, Mohammed Al-Kesha, has actually stepped down and started his own fintech-focused fund called Disrupt Tech, of which I'm also a partner. And I think to see somebody step down as an entrepreneur and use their own capital to start their own VC fund that is very industry-focused is an amazing evolution in our ecosystem. I think the couple of final points I would like to make is that the narrative of women in the Arab region is a very interesting one. We've seen, I would say, very consistent and high percentages of increases in female-led businesses, specifically coming out of the GCC, which is mainly tech-focused. We've seen a very interesting women-focused fund emerge, Mindshift Capital, which I think is leading the way in demonstrating how women-led businesses not only are solid businesses, but they're actually a much more interesting investment to make in terms of returns and high performance. So I think there's a lot to be hopeful and optimistic about in the Arab region, and for Arab youth to think about if they want to pursue entrepreneurship as a career path. I think the only thing I would say that I would end with, not everyone has to start a business. I'm very cognizant of the fact that in the Arab region we talk about entrepreneurship all the time, and we tend to romanticize it and make it sound like it's the only solution to all of our problems. If we could only see more entrepreneurs out there and only see more business, and it is very important to our economic growth. I think what is even more important to our growth is innovation-led enterprises, as opposed to, small and medium-sized businesses that aren't necessarily innovative in nature, but also very necessary for the backbone of our economies. However, it's a lot of pressure to put on our Arab youth to say that everyone has to be entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. What I would say is that I would love to see everyone in the region, our youth in particular, become more entrepreneurial and more willing to become creative and to problem solve in whatever career path they choose. And that requires a different mindset. That is what I think we want to encourage all Arab youth to focus on, is to really adopt an entrepreneurial mindset. And not everyone has to start a business. Not everyone has to be that person to start the next unicorn. And we also need to maybe not glorify so much this we need to see all these unicorns emerge. Who's going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg? I don't know that our region has to see this now. What we want to see is a lot more innovation emerge bottom up. I think the unicorns will come, but we need to let that happen at its own pace and very organically. Innovation needs to be something that becomes mainstream. We need to see, and you know this, Rana, you talk about this all the time. We need to see our governments invest a lot more in science and innovation and research, and we're not seeing that yet. And that is the part that is lacking in our ecosystem that I hope that we will start seeing more of a focus on. So I think I'll stop there for now and let you ask some follow-up questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Dina. That was amazing. I mean, you complimented what Jinane said in a very, very useful, holistic kind of way, giving us concrete advice on how to go forward.
Jinane and I make a good team.
Yes. I know that you are amazing, all of you. And I'm really excited to be part of this. And this is just the beginning. Hopefully we'll do other things in the future. So now I'm going to introduce our third speaker, who I'm really happy I just met through Jinane, and he's an amazing person. Dr. Marwan Hassoun is currently serving as the Executive Director of the Explorer Innovation Fund Program at UM6P Ventures in Morocco. He helped found it in collaboration with MIT Sandbox Innovation Fund, where he has been mentoring startup teams since 2017. Dr. Hassoun also founded and co-founded, partnered, launched, and managed multiple technology startups over the past 22 years, and is also currently the president of Intellectual Inspiration, a semiconductor technology and IP consulting firm based in the Boston area. So the floor is yours, Dr. Marwan.
Thank you very much, and I'm really honored to be here and to follow such two distinguished speakers. And much of I'm going to say has already been said, really. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to take another tact, another avenue here for how to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to take you to some basics. My forte is actually going out and doing it. I actually I like to talk, I like to plan, and we put a plan together. But my forte is to go ahead and go build the program, build the company. As a matter of fact, that's why Jinane sent me to Morocco to go ahead and build the Explorer program. And the Explorer program is very similar to the MIT Sandbox program, but it's focused in Morocco. And the idea, as Dina mentioned, is to try and provide some seed capital to Arab youth at an early stage within an educational environment. Technology, science, and business, but see how we can take those ideas, seed them with a little bit of funding, with a lot of mentoring, and see how we can take them to the next stage or help them take themselves really to the next stage. But having set that up, I'm going to go back down to really how to be an entrepreneur. And I'm going to cover a few things. So I want to share some slides with you in order to frame the discussion. I hope it doesn't crash this time. Okay. So let's start from the beginning. One of the main components that you must have as an entrepreneur, you have to have the courage to be an entrepreneur. It is very scary prospect to be an entrepreneur, to start your own company. I do agree with Dina to a great extent. Being an entrepreneur doesn't necessarily mean that you have to start your own company. Being an entrepreneur can be within the company you are in the situation you are in. But to start a company, to join a startup, does take a lot of courage. I'm a Palestinian. I've been living in the United States a long time. When I told my father and my mother that I was leaving my job because I wanted to start a company from scratch, I was going to take a big, cut in money. My father's first reaction was, "You should not do that." No, no, you don't leave a secure job, you don't leave a secure environment and do it. It took a lot of courage. So not only to take the financial risks, to actually go or against my parents or convince them that it's okay, it'll be okay, I'm doing it. You do need that courage because it's a lot easier to sit and just talk about being an entrepreneur. You have to get that bravery to cross the chasm between talking about it and actually being an entrepreneur. You need to start that journey. It is very easy to sit down and talk about what you want to do, talk about the advantages of your technology, the advantage of your science, all the different companies that are going to use it, that want to use it. Talk is easy, but go ahead and start that journey. Take the first step. Take the first step, whatever that first step is. It doesn't have to be the first step being I'm leaving my job or I'm not going to go for that PhD and I'm going to go start the company. It doesn't have to be that big, but go ahead and start some concrete steps towards getting your startup going, and put some goals. And I'll talk about that in a second in order for you to get there. again, I'll talk from personal experience. My personal experience was not leaving the job that I had after I graduated from college, but actually taking the job, but then spending my nights actually starting the journey, working on the technology and working on some of the markets and customer discovery to figure out where this technology is going to go. So go ahead and start your journey. And sometimes, as this woman can see, sometimes you have several roads that you have to take. At some point, you have to pick one. Research it, but pick one and go. Otherwise, you'll be doing what she does, which is you'll just be sitting at that intersection for a long, long time. Make sure you have a plan, okay? You have to have a plan. You have to sit down and figure out, what is it that I'm doing and where do I want to go? What's my goal? And put a plan that gets you there. Initially, your plan is generic, and then you get some details in it as you know, okay? Again, it's a lot easier to not have a plan because that's not the interesting part, is sit down, put a plan. The interesting part is to work on your technology, work on your science, but you have to put a plan together on how you're going to get to where you want to go. And as the saying, you know, a goal without a plan is just a wish. If you don't have a plan, you're not going to get there. Now, it's okay to keep changing your plan. That is totally fine. If I look at my startups or my colleagues' startups, the number of times we've changed our plan is enormous. But every time we changed it with thought and consideration, and then we're able to always go back to our plan. So always make sure you do have a plan, as hard as it's going to be. The other one, don't work on your own. Don't think you know it all. You know, make sure you find mentors to help you out, people that have done this before, people that have some wisdom to give to you, and listen to them. I've mentored hundreds of startups in the United States, and now I have the fortune to do it in Morocco. And the ones that really benefit from the mentorships are the ones that listen to their mentors and the one that seek the mentors. Some of the successful young startups I've worked with are the ones that have used not only the mentors assigned to them, they went out and find more and more mentors to listen to. You don't have to listen to everything your mentors tell you. They're giving you advice. You take that advice, depending on the situation, you aggregate that knowledge and you make your own decision. Get as much feedback as you can. That helps you clarify your mind. It helps you figure out what path you're going to take. Again, don't do it on your own. Join a community. In the case of the startups, you know, whether MIT Sandbox that we work with, or in Morocco, the Explorer program, the idea is to create a community where entrepreneurs can share their experience. And please don't be stingy with your experience. Share it with your colleagues. You're not competing with them. The goal is to get all of you to get more and more of these entrepreneurs out and raising the level of entrepreneurship and the level of economic opportunity in the entire Arab world. Numbers are important. Do not forget numbers. Do not run away from numbers. You have to have your numbers. You have to understand your market size, your financials, any assumptions, your cost, your burn rate. For engineers, and scientists, I'm an engineer, I'm an electrical engineer, and I just want to develop my technology, and I wanted to develop my technology, but you have to pay attention to the other numbers, and you have to know those numbers and respect those numbers. Saying I want to create technology to enter this particular marketplace, if there's no market opportunity, or the market opportunity is not large enough for your business, then it's not a viable startup. It's a hobby. It's a research project. So make sure you have a handle on your numbers. One of the most important things is listen to your customers. It's much easier to ask your friends and your family about what you're doing, about what you want to do, or your colleagues that are in the same area as you. This is a flaw I see in a huge one in scientists and engineers. Okay, they need to get out of their element, get out of their lab, and they need to go ask the customers, communicate with the customers. Ultimately, you do need to build what the customer wants. Doesn't matter whether this customer is individual consumer or this customer is a large companies, you still have to find a way to get there and talk to your customers in order to develop the proper product. Developing the technology is one thing. Developing a product is another thing. And the technology enables the product, but you do need to develop the product. This is a statistics. It's based on the US, and I can't stress it enough. The reason startups fail is they don't listen to the customers. So make sure you listen to your customers. That's all I have really, and hopefully I got some of the I didn't touch on science engineer. I did touch on how the scientists and engineers behave, but I'm happy to ask any answer any specific questions after that.
Thank you very, very, very much. That's very nice. You kind of completed the circle, giving concrete advice, like steps for our young people to follow or at least reflect upon. Before we start with the Q&A, which I hope people will start writing, whether they want to write in English أو اللي بده يحكي بالعربي يكتب أسئلته بالعربي. دينا مروان وجنان كلهم بيحكوا عربي، بيقدروا يجاوبوا هاي الأسئلة باللغة العربية. لو فصحى عامي المهم إنه باللغة العربية. فرجاء أي حدا يكتب، إذا أسهل له يحكي بالعربي يكتب بالعربي، أو نحن بنساعد بعض في الأجوبة. من هون ليكتبوا بالعربي بدنا ناخذ سيلفي، جروب سيلفي. هذا إشي مشان to document إنه إحنا we were here. فالكل هلا أنا just take. I'm inviting you all to look into and smile, say cheese or whatever لكم إياه، وهي we're starting the group selfie. I think this is it, unless there's something else or another technology. I don't know. Retake just in case. Oops. All right. So, how do I get out of this? Let's see. We're back to the screen. Use this one. So everybody should be taking their selfies. All right. I only have 7 people who finished, and there's 160 people. So I'll give it another minute, and then we'll be back to the questions. And hopefully this will be time for you guys to be reflecting and preparing questions, and or between the panelists themselves or with the audience. All right, I'm going to end it and we'll move forward. Okay. Well, we had 14 people, but that's okay, save. Whoops, hello? Yeah. All right. Hopefully that worked. All right, so let's go. Can you hear me? Everybody can hear me and see me?
Yes, I can. I don't know about anybody else.
Okay. All right. So let's go to, we have 15 minutes till the end of the session, which will be a combination of questions that you would like to ask each other, and questions that is in the Q&A box that you can access and see. Make sure it's on the top part. There we go. If anybody has already posted any questions that you've already seen that you want to answer. So I'm going to start off by actually picking up from what Dina said, that we don't all have to be entrepreneurs. We don't all have to be, creating our own businesses, because that's not how the world is. Each human being is unique and different and has a different potential and a different path for their lives. But the key thing that we need to think about is how do we foster those skills? How do we change our mindsets? And those skills are critical thinking skills, right? Fostering curiosity, fostering teamwork, fostering having the courage, as Marwan said, to ask questions and to go out there, and basing it on evidence. So reading more, accessing what's out there in the environment. So from that sense, I would like to ask the panelists, and anybody can jump in and answer. What do you think are the challenges facing youth or the general population in the Arab world in developing their skills and changing and shifting that mindset to become entrepreneurial in how they think? So who would like to pick up on that, whether from a science biotechnology perspective and engineering, or from a business perspective, or anyone in general?
I can start.
Yeah, please, Dina.
That's your question, Dina.
I think they're I don't know that I would call them challenges, but rather opportunities, right? I think, and it's not all on the responsibility of youth to figure out how to get there, right? So I think education is a core component, and that's largely a policy issue, and we need to see a lot more focus on entrepreneurial pedagogy be mainstreamed across schools and universities, which we're not necessarily seeing enough of, specifically on the public school side, which is the majority. I think in terms of culture, societal culture, we're a conservative culture. We're not. We don't necessarily encourage risk taking, and I think that's something that we can. Youth should be willing to pursue more, be willing to take risks and fail and not be afraid. And that also requires a cultural shift, which is basically to not shame somebody when they do fail, but rather to encourage them to take a step back and learn from what didn't work and to keep moving forward. Failure is not necessarily something that we celebrate in the Arab region. And I think that needs to shift. And I think that can also start with young people, with each other. Young people don't need to wait for their parents or their teachers or their professors to, applaud them for failure. They can do it with each other and encourage each other to make mistakes and pick up and move on and learn. And I think, for me, I think one of the core pieces is to be willing. I mean, Marwan touched on courage, and I think that's important, is to be willing to have the courage to try something new. I think in the region, for us to see the Arab region, I'm from Egypt, Jinane is from Morocco, Marwan, you're from Palestine. We come from countries with a lot of problems. And, Rana, Jordan too. We have a lot of problems, and COVID has just made that a lot more difficult. But these problems are all opportunities, and that requires that we encourage our young people to shift their mindset to ones that look at these problems not as a burden, but as an opportunity to delve in and create something and to own the future that they want to see. And I think that's what we really want to encourage more youth to think about, is that they shouldn't be waiting for others. They don't need to wait for governments. They don't need to wait for those who are several generations older. They have agency, and we want them to step up and lead and change what they can, because there's a lot that they can do, and we see it every day. Every day I see a lot of hope and inspiration, and what a lot of young people around the region are doing on a daily basis. I mean, in Jordan alone, and I can't remember his name, there was a young entrepreneur who had started an ed tech company, and he was the lead person to help the government of Jordan through COVID and providing support to students when education went virtual. There are amazing stories of young people doing amazing things, and we need to encourage that, support that, highlight that, tell those stories, show those narratives, because as more people see that, they will be encouraged to do the same.
Thank you. Very, very relative.
Jinane wants to add something.
Yeah, Jinane, please add. And if you can touch also, I'm looking at the questions about how to, combine doing biotech entrepreneurship with science and research. And please add on to whatever Dina has said as well.
Yeah, I would like to just add on something about, we're talking about the mindset of the young people and kind of encourage them to develop the mindset that Dina and Marwan talked about. I think the older people also have to change their mindset in a major way. They have to look at young people as people with potential, as people that can do things that they can't do, and truly kind of believe that change and innovation is going to come from the young people. That's what I see here in the US. As we get older, we kind of start believing that the young people are the ones that are going to take us to the next step. I think the Arab world, the older people in their 40s, their 50s, the teachers, the advisors, the mentors, the people you need to do business with, have to start seeing young people as that too. So just to add that, so have that mindset to change as well. So with respect to biotech, biotech, pharma, those are areas where it's really expensive to develop a product. The capital investments before you kind of get a product out the door could be pretty expensive, both in terms of equipment and lab space and the experiments that you need to run, the clinical trials and all of this. So part of what we do at MIT, we've done is make sure that students have access to biomaker space, that they run their own projects in this biomaker space, and MIT invested in that. We worked a lot on making sure we make instructional spaces available for students to kind of run their own experiments, so that they don't have to have this cost to get access to the space and the lab. The other piece we do is we work through kind of a business model canvas, is to tell them that actually their customers may be investors. So they have to, ultimately, you may not be able to yourself take a company all the way from A to Z. You do the way you do with an app or a software application. So what you may have to think about is who are going to be the people that are going to invest, $50 million right away to help you develop the technology. What do you need to do to convince the right types of investors that you've got something that's worth investing in? So kind of switch things around about who they're trying to make the pitch to, and just use the same methodology and the same thinking about market research, but just think about it differently. Think about where your next check is going to come from and how you're going to survive, and understand the path to market kind of historically. Look at similar companies that started. What was their path to market? And try to figure out if you can kind of follow that same path and convince people along that path to give you the funding or do the licensing. You have to understand the path to market for similar technologies. So just maybe Marwan, I think you've seen a few of those also come through. You probably have something to add there.
Yeah, Marwan, I'd like you to follow up on Jinane, but I want to add two things I'd like you to touch upon as we're coming to the last 5 minutes. Is from your experience in Morocco, how do you encourage the youth to create teams and to be collaborative in nature? Because I think that's also a challenge that we face going forward. And from your experience, how do you tackle science and biotechnology in Morocco? Thank you.
So the creating teams or encouraging people to and scientists, engineers to create teams is even difficult than it was before with COVID-19. I mean, we went from a program that's about creating a community, bringing the students together, the entrepreneurs together, to creating it totally virtually. And I'm not going to lie to you, that made it extremely challenging to create the teams. But at the moment, the way we're doing it is we create these pitch-a-thon sessions where we're giving the various students an opportunity to pitch their ideas to a larger community of entrepreneurs that are already expressed an interest in being entrepreneurs and not necessarily have a solid idea. So we actually are having a little bit of success, grouping a team from MIT with a team from Morocco to create one venture. And the Explorer program in Morocco is young, so we have to create more. But the key for us is to be very, very patient with this, not to expect the result next week or next month. I know our administrators, the ones that want to fund these things, want results now. They want collaboration now, and we have to be really careful. And we have a responsibility to the Arab youth for them to trust us, that when we're bringing these together, we are bringing them to their technology is not being stolen, their technology is not being taken away, but rather we're trying to add to what they have. And there's an element of trust amongst the teams. So that's our approach at the moment. And the mentors are all aware of that's one of the things they need to encourage people to do. And I'm sorry, Rana, I forgot your second part of your question.
Oh, no, I think you touched upon it in general, talking about applications of science and biotechnology in Morocco as examples, but we're running out of time.
Sure.
But I would like to wrap up and maybe give each speaker one word to say, because we have exactly 2.5 minutes. So I'm going to wrap up, and then we'll end. Each one gives us one piece of advice in one word, if possible. I'm just going to say that I think being able for us today to all of us talk from different parts of the Arab world, from the whole globe together, this would have not been possible if COVID-19 was not available, because we'd planned a real in-person meeting, which would be restrictive because of money and visas and 100 other things that we wouldn't meet together. So actually there's a silver lining here that we can all meet and we can all talk, and everybody can email everybody, and we can find those mentors, follow up with people. So the audience, if you have other questions, you can follow up with all three of our panelists or anybody else, and they can connect you to other people. It's about creating a network, and everybody's email is available. If you just Google their names, they're all well known because they're part of other academic and institutions all over the world. And I want to end just on a positive note that every person, every human being is unique. I mean, from a biology perspective, your DNA is different, you are different. And because you're different, you have something to give to the world. And it's your journey. You don't have to have the big splash. It could be about just changing yourself. And like Marwan said, it's going to take time. Nothing happens overnight. But it starts from the grassroots. It starts from how you in your little family, how you bring up your kids when you become future parents. To give up when you're an old person and say, it's okay, it's not my turn now, it's them. And I can learn from them, and be humble. And this lifelong learning, I'm going to keep learning all my life. And reading, we need to read. Things don't come out of the ether. Hey, just out of the nothing, من الهوى. لازم نقرأ. We have to read and read and read, because that's how you learn. And there's so much available out there that you can learn from by reading. And I think Dina said, and Jinane, all of you talked about writing your stories. Write your journey. Keep a journal, a diary. Write what happens with you every day, because we want to read your stories so you can be an inspiration for the next generation coming up. And just, I wrote my book, 5 Scars and 5 أوجه. It's actually in Arabic now. هيو بالعربي من الدار العلوم العربية. فاللي بده يشتري في اللغة العربية ويقرأ my story مشان أشجعكم أنتوا تكتبوا. أنا واحدة عادية وكتبت قصتي، فأنتوا كلكم تقدروا تكتبوا قصتكم بنفس الطريقة. Okay, one word. We have 19 seconds. أبدأ. جينان, Dina, Marwan, go.
I'll go with resilience.
Dina.
Dina's muted.
Okay. Marwan, it's going to go. Marwan, say something.
I'm going to borrow the Nike one. Just do it. Just go out and do it.
Good. Dina, are you in? Not yet? أكل حال. Can you hear? Perseverance. Okay, so perseverance, resilience, and go do it. Okay, I want to add believe in yourself and dream. Believe in yourself and dream. Okay, inshallah narakum fil mustaqbal. Tell us your news. Tell us what's happening with you guys. And inshallah we all together will make this world a better place. Thank you very much, our panelists. Ahleen, thank you. Thank you very much. Allah ma'akum. Take care. Ahleen.